You may have aspirations to succeed in 2025. You may even have drafted your New Year's resolutions. But fact is, by February, many have already abandoned their missions. This is because the power to do, as well as success, is not in their hands, but it is in the hands of God. In 2024, we sowed our seed. However, sowing our seed doesn't guarantee that we will have a good harvest. Without vigilance, without watching and praying, and keeping our guard up against those four enemies of harvest, we will definitely not have a good harvest. The four enemies of harvest are birds. First of all, when we look at a farm, you can see birds such as crows coming in and swooping in on the harvest, pecking on the corn, and wanting to steal away a portion. Even at seed sowing time, these birds had descended on our fields and had tried to dig up the corn or dig up the seed. And secondly, you have parasites in the form of weevils or even maggots. These eat into our harvest and seek to reduce the harvest. Thirdly, you have thieves. These are people that were never there from the beginning when we were tilling the ground, when we were sweating and working very hard to prepare the ground and sow our seed. But all of a sudden, when it is harvest time, they start creeping out of the crevices and want to partake. Now, we'll remember that the Bible tells us the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. These are the antics of the enemy. We would find relatives, friends, people that will crawl out there, weren't there during our struggle time, but want to be there when we are enjoying our harvest. Fourthly, we have wildfires. As you would witness in the wilderness, a wildfire ravages anything and everything that is in their path. This is pure destruction when it comes to a harvest field. And that's what the enemy tries to do. When he sees that it is time for us to reap from our toil, to reap from the hard work that we had invested, he comes in and pushes in destruction so that we would weep and turn to blame God. Now, without vigilance, those four enemies will be able to destroy what God has intended for us. Many people have lost out on accessing their harvest because of lack of vigilance. And in the end, they turn around and blame God. And it seems as if God has failed them or God has not delivered. But the Bible clearly tells us to watch and pray. And most of the time, we are so caught up in praying that we forget to watch, and then we walk amiss. We'll realize and we'll notice in our lives, in certain times when the harvest comes, you'll find that all sorts of challenges come our way. The car will break down, something needs to be fixed around the house, the children fall sick. Every problem that you did not have when you didn't have anything in your pocket or when you were still seed sowing will suddenly crop up and be a problem in order to eat into your harvest. We would also find that people that weren't really in our lives, people that weren't there in our toil, will suddenly come up and crawl up out of the crevices. You'll also find that a great deal of wastefulness suddenly arises in us. All of a sudden, we want to own things and buy things that are not a need but a want. And in that way, the enemy, without our knowledge, is stealing our funds. That's how demons work. You don't see where you spent the money, but the money is gone because you haven't used it according to God's will, but we followed the ways of the flesh. Now, 2025 requires a great deal of vigilance. One key example that we can glean from is the life of Boaz in the book of Ruth. We look at him and we see that in harvest time, he left the comfort of his home and he went to his fields. When he got to his fields, he was watching over what was happening. This is the level of vigilance that is required of us as believers. We cannot be asleep spiritually and asleep physically in the sense of not having wisdom, not having understanding of our environments and who is for us and who is meant for the season in our lives. Now, God will place people in our hearts that we ought to help, but it's not everyone that needs help that is sent by God. When you come to look at Boaz, he left a portion, the remnant of his harvest, for those that were truly in need, the poor. But he was there to watch over his crops against the birds, the crows, against the pests, against the thieves, against the wildfires. And in the end, he reaped the full reward of the harvest. In 2025, God wants us to reap the full benefit of the harvest that he has in store for us. But again, vigilance. watch, and pray. God bless you, and may He bless us with a wonderful 2025.